Due to copyright, I can't publish many audiobooks on YouTube. At our audiobook novel service, we offer access to over 300 full novels from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, Wuxia, and more, all in high-quality audio format. Each novel is available with a one-time payment only. No subscriptions, no monthly payment, and no ads. Payments via PayPal or Ko-fi. To browse the full list of available novels, message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out our full catalog on Discord. Chapter 263-265. Virethane City. After the last human cart vanishes into the smoke, Soren sweeps her gaze over the carnage. "Strip everything worth taking," she orders curtly. "Load the goods into the carts. Send them back to the main before dawn." Her soldiers move immediately, dragging crates of grain, barrels of water, and sacks of coin from shattered homes and abandoned stalls. Broken furniture and blood-stained linens are tossed aside without a glance. Once the last cart creaks away into the darkness, Soren speaks again, her voice carrying over the crackle of flames. "That's enough for tonight. Rest. We move at first light." Thurn said. "You heard her. Find a roof or what's left of one, and get some sleep. We'll need it." Nasara steps past a smoking pile of rubble, her pale hair glinting red in the firelight. "Pick the spots with the least screaming," she says dryly, earning a few dark chuckles from nearby soldiers. Veltha flicks his tail, the scales catching the light as he rumbles. "And no one touches my cake. I'll hang who dares." Their commands ripple outward, the units breaking off to settle among the ruins. The air hums with the low chatter of resting troops, the distant sobs of captives, and the endless crackle of burning wood. Carnessa lingers near the four generals. Technically, she is still a commander under Thurn's authority, but she walks with them like an equal. The next morning, the army moves out. The trail of their march is a long, dark ribbon cutting through the open plains, hundreds of boots and hooves churning the dirt. The air smells faintly of ash, carried on the wind from decks afar behind them. In the largest carriage, its reinforced walls muffling the outside noise, a broad table dominates the center. Spread across it is a detailed map of their next target. A sprawling city nestled in a valley, flanked by a winding river on the east and steep cliffs to the west. The parchment is weighted down by daggers and empty mugs, preventing it from sliding with the carriage's rumble. Thurn leans over the table, one claw tapping against the river's painted curve. "The eastern gate is their weakest point," he says, his voice low and certain. "The current is fast enough to keep most heavy units away, but my poison will flow downstream. The river will do half the work for me." Nasara rests her chin on her knuckles, studying the cliffs to the west. "The walls there will be thick, but the ground is riddled with old mine tunnels. I can collapse sections from underneath and open gaps for our siege units." Vertha folds her scaled arms, her gaze fixed on the northern road. "They'll expect us from here. Fast units can harry their scouts, keep them guessing. But if we commit to the north, we'll meet their strongest cavalry head-on." Soren's eyes flicker between shadow and light as the carriage sways. "They're on high alert because of Dexa. Their watchtowers will burn signals the moment they spot us. We hit hard, fast, and vanish before they can rally. My quick units can cut their messenger lines in the first hour." Carnessa traces a gauntlet finger along the city's inner streets, her eyes narrowing. "If we force them to retreat here," she taps a plaza near the center, "we can bottleneck them. The more they cram in, the easier it will be to break them in one strike." Nasara smirks faintly, spoken like someone who's been watching Sir Mazel's playbook. Thurn chuckles. She's learning, maybe too well. The map trembles slightly as the carriage hits a rut, the mugs rattling against the wood. Outside, the muted roar of marching feet continues without pause. Soren finally straightens, her tone sharp and final. "We split into our elements. Hit from four sides and leave them no way out. The city falls in one day, or we've wasted the momentum Dexa gave us." No one argues. The carriage rolls on, the map between them already stained with ash from the last city they burned. The moment the carriage stops, orders ripple outward like cracks through stone. Each general departs with their own unit, the morning sun glinting off steel, chitin, and scales. Thurn moves along the riverbank, his arachne legs clicking over wet stones. His soldiers fan out behind him, their armor dull and mottled, perfect for blending with the reeds. He kneels, trailing a claw in the current. The water runs cold and fast. "Perfect," he mutters. He turns to his second in command, a wiry arachne with venom-green eyes. "Release the first batch upstream. Don't rush. It needs to blend." Glass vials are uncorked, their contents swirling into the river like smoke underwater. The poison vanishes from sight almost instantly. Thurn smiles thinly. By the time they use Thyr waters, their bodies will already be failing them. Farther north, Soren stands in the shadow of a rocky ridge, the wind tugging at her cloak. Around her, her scouts melt into the tall grass, bows and short blades at the ready. She points toward the distant glint of a watchtower. 2 minutes after the sun dips behind that cliff, we move. Kill the signal men first. If they get one flare into the sky, we've lost our window. A scout approaches, whispering, "Patrol, 20 strong, moving along the ridge path." "Good," Soren says, a sharp edge in her tone. "We'll use their bodies to block the road. And keep the shadows thick. I don't want a single rider escaping." On the western cliff, Nasara crouches near a fissure in the rock, her pale hair catching flecks of sunlight. The air smells of dust and iron, old mines. She runs a hand along the ground, feeling for the hollow vibration. Her shield bearers stand ready behind her, massive forms in heavy armor, shields like walls. "Collapse points here, here, and here," she says, marking spots with chalk. "Once the ground drops, we move in slow. We hold the breach while the others strike inside." To the south, Vertha coils along the edge of a forest road, her serpentine tail sweeping the dirt in deliberate patterns. Her fast units, slender, lightly armored fighters, fan out in the underbrush. She gestures with a flick of her wrist. "We cut their supply runners first. No bread, no arrows, no reinforcements. Then we circle back and strangle the survivors." By nightfall, all 4 fronts are in motion. Silent strikes, shifting shadows, collapsing earth, poisoned water. Each piece of the siege sliding into place. The city ahead doesn't yet know it, but the hunt has already begun. Inside the city, the walls of Virthane creak under the weight of stationed soldiers. The smell of pitch and oil clings to the air, ready for the first hint of fire. From atop the eastern gate, Captain Rolf watches the river churn beneath the drawbridge. "Currents stronger than usual," a guard mutters beside him. Rolf grunts. "Spring melt from the mountains. Won't stop a determined army." He scans the tree line beyond the far bank, eyes narrowing. Still, too quiet. In the northern watchtower, Captain Lemus leans over the railing, squinting into the distance. He's been on shift since before dawn, and the only movement he's seen is the slow sway of grass. Until now, something ripples in the field, a pattern that shouldn't be there. His gut clenches. "Messenger," he barks. "Tell the west post to." The words die in his throat as a dark shape detaches from the shadows below. A glint of steel, a blur of motion, then silence. Down in the western district, the miners' quarter smells of damp stone and coal dust. Most of the tunnels were sealed years ago after repeated cave-ins, but a handful remain open for storage. A group of militia stand near one of these old shafts, dice rattling in a wooden cup. The ground shifts under them, subtle at first, then with a sudden crack. One man shouts, "The wall!" But the warning is swallowed by a thunderous roar as the street collapses, dragging 2 houses and a guard post down into the darkness. At the southern gate, the mood is more restless. The cavalry commander, Lady Mara, reins in her horse as another dust-choked rider stumbles in from the road. His uniform is torn, his face pale. "They hit the supply train," he gasps. "No survivors. They knew our route." Mara's jaw tightens. "Then the enemy's closer than we thought." She turns to the signaler. "Red flare now." The flare arcs skyward, hissing, but in the distance, where the smoke should rise above the northern ridge, nothing answers. In the war council chamber, the city lord slams his fist on the table as a messenger delivers the 3rd report in under an hour. Eastern watchtower silent. Northern patrol missing. Western quarter collapse. Southern supplies gone. The old general beside him exhales slowly. "They're not attacking yet." The governor's voice sharpens. "Then what are they doing?" The general's gaze drifts to the shuttered windows, as if he can see the enemy moving unseen through the dark. "They're closing the jaws." The last bell of the day has barely faded when the first unnatural howl cuts through the air. It comes from the east, long, low, and resonating with a strange vibration that makes the iron hinges on the gates quiver. The soldiers on the wall flinch, gripping their weapons tighter. Down in the streets, dogs whimper and hide under carts. From the river mist, shadows begin to take form. Not boats, shapes moving through the water. Sleek, serpentine bodies break the surface for a heartbeat before sliding back under. The current that should have been their shield now becomes the perfect cover for scaled forms with glinting eyes. Veltha rises from the water first, his tail curling over the parapet in a surge of strength that sends 2 defenders tumbling into the river. Behind him, thousands of lesser serpentine warriors clamber up with dripping weapons, their hissed war cries echoing in the fog. Chapter 264-266. Attacking the Watervale clan. In a small house near the river, A boy presses his forehead to the cold glass of his window. The night is quiet except for the faint rush of water, but his eyes are fixed, unblinking, on the dark surface. He doesn't move, doesn't even seem to hear the floor creak behind him. "Why are you still up?" His mother's voice snaps, sharp with fatigue and frustration. "You need to sleep now, we have a lot to do in the morning." The boy doesn't answer. Her irritation turns into a frown. "Did you hear me?" She walks closer, ready to scold him again, but as she follows his gaze her breath catches. From the river's black mirror, shapes begin to rise. First just ripples, then slick backs, then glistening claws. 1, 3, a dozen. More. Her voice trembles. "Gods!" The boy still doesn't move, his small hands gripping the windowsill. In an instant, she grabs him, tearing him away from the glass. "No looking, hold on to me." He starts to protest, but her arms tighten as she races through the narrow hallway. The floorboards groan under her pounding steps. Behind them, the night fills with wet, guttural growls. She bursts through the back door into the cold air, running toward the old root cellar half buried in the earth. The child clings to her neck, now silent, his face pressed against her shoulder. The sound of water slapping against stone grows louder. Something is climbing the bank. She doesn't look back. She throws open the cellar door, shoving him inside, and follows, slamming it shut just as the first heavy thud lands on the porch. Screams erupt before the first alarm bell can ring. A baker in the market square freezes mid-shout as a shadow lunges from between the soldiers, black claws slashing through wood and flesh alike. Crates spill fruit into the street, the bright colors rolling across cobblestones now splattered with blood. At the eastern gate, the captain shoves through the panicking soldiers. "Shut the gate! Shut!" His order dies as he sees it. The massive doors stand wide open, hinges dripping with fresh blood instead of oil. A pair of sentries lie crumpled at the threshold, throats torn out. The eastern wall is chaos. Corporal Deeren grips his spear tighter, boots sliding in the wet stone as he pushes against the flow of retreating guards. "Hold the line! Back to the gate!" Someone shouts from above. "They're inside! They're already inside!" Deeren's stomach knots. "What do you mean inside?" "The gates are." His words choke as he rounds the corner. "They are open. Not broken. Not smashed. Just open." The massive timbers gape like the mouth of some great beast, and beyond them, more shapes pour in from the mist, scaled, hulking, silent but for the soft slap of their feet on wet stone. "Close them!" Deeren bellows, but the winch team is gone. Their posts are empty except for a dropped lantern spilling oil across the platform. The smell is sharp, stinging his nose. A soldier beside him whispers, "They were supposed to be outside," as if saying it could change the truth. Another voice shouts from somewhere up the wall, high and panicked. "The market! They're in the market already!" Deeren's mind races. How? The gates are open, yes, but they would have had to cross half the city in moments. Unless they were already here. A shadow blurs at the edge of his vision. Something drops from the wall. Too fast, too silent. A scream cuts short, followed by the clang of a sword hitting stone. Deeren spins, but the alley is empty except for the sprawled body of the man who had been speaking to him moments ago. His throat is gone. The air is thick now with smoke and the copper tang of blood. Bells ring from 3 different directions, their uneven rhythm telling him everything. No coordination, no defense. Across the city, flames begin to spread from rooftop to rooftop, not by accident but with purpose. He catches sight of one figure, a tall woman with blade-like limbs, leaping the gaps between houses, cutting down anyone who flees. Her eyes glint once in the firelight before she's gone. The old soldier mutters, eyes narrowing. "Gods help us." They knew every alley, every choke point. And then, like a candle snuffed in the dark, the resistance falters. Deeren fights his way back toward the plaza, only to find the flagstones littered with bodies, soldiers and civilians alike. Above the chaos, the banner of the city hangs torn, its colors drenched and dark. By the time the 4th bell should ring, there is no one left to pull the rope. And just like that, the city falls in hours, not days, not weeks. Hours. Smoke drifts low over the streets. Somewhere beyond the river, the victors are already planting their banners. The council chamber smells faintly of ink and heated wax. The meeting has only just ended, and the representatives of other forces file out in clusters, speaking in low, clipped voices. War maps still sprawl across the long table, their edges curling under the heat of nearby candles. Valira lingers for a moment, letting the murmurs fade. Her eyes scan the marked battlefronts, the northeast and the west, both bleeding red ink from the enemy's advance. The west is bad, yes, but the northeast is collapsing faster than reports predicted. She turns as one of the Yosha ministers approaches, bowing slightly. Lady Valira, the Ashedge forces will be welcomed wherever you choose to deploy. His Majesty thanks you for coming all this way. Valira nods, but her voice is firm. Tell him I've decided on the northeast. That's where the enemy is striking hardest. The minister hesitates. The west is where most of the high-ranking nobles hold their territories. Let the others hold the west. Valira cuts in sharply. If the northeast falls, there won't be a west left to defend. From the other side of the chamber, one of her commanders, an older tier 6 with braided gray hair, steps forward. My lady, the scouts say the monsters there are not ordinary. Their vanguard moves like they know the land. Cities fall in hours. Valira meets his gaze without flinching. Good. Then we'll see if they know how to fight me. Above the sprawling expanse of the Watervale clan city, the sky darkens, not from clouds, but from the sheer weight of killing intent radiating downward. Mazel stands in the air as if the wind itself holds him aloft, his obsidian armor glinting faintly under the dim light. His eyes sweep over the massive city below, not small like a kingdom's capital, but vast, sprawling far beyond the horizon. Clans may only have one city, but that one city is a fortress, a behemoth built on centuries of poured resources, layered wards, and walls that dwarf mountains. Behind him, the air ripples. One by one, his 4 commanders take their places in the air. 2 are high-level tier SIXS, their presence like storms chained in human form. The other 2, middle-level tier SIXS, radiate lethal precision, sharp, focused, unyielding. And beneath them, 500,000 monster soldiers. The ground below is a seething ocean of claws, fangs, and armor, each formation disciplined, not a step out of line. Banners ripple in the wind. Mazel lets the silence stretch for a heartbeat, the wind tugging faintly at his black cloak. Then he speaks, voice dropping like a hammer. Form the advance ranks. Spread the vanguard wide. I want pressure on every inch of that shield. Yes, General. All 4 bow slightly before vanishing in streaks of light toward their assigned positions. Below, the disciplined monster army shifts like a single organism. Siege weapons, each the size of small house, lumber forward. Tier 5 commanders bark orders, and the deep thrum of war drums begins to roll across the battlefield like distant thunder. From the city walls, defenders watch with grim faces. Mazel's voice is low, yet it rolls across the battlefield like a tide, carried by power rather than wind. Humans, he says, every word dripping with calm certainty. Before I attack, I will give you a choice. Surrender now and become subordinates of my king, and you will live. The words hang in the air, almost heavy enough to press on the chest. Murmurs ripple along the battlements. Archers glance at each other. Spears shift in sweaty palms. A grizzled guard spits over the wall. Subordinates to monsters? I'd rather my bones bleach in the sun. Another snarls. Let him come. We'll die on our feet, not kneel like dogs. But for every voice raised in defiance, there are others that stay silent, eyes flickering with doubt. Then a sharp whistle cuts through the noise. From the inner court, a surge of water bursts skyward, shimmering under the dim light, spiraling higher and higher until it forms a narrow column that seems to pierce the heavens. At its peak, a figure steps from the torrent as if the water itself bore her weight. Her armor gleams with a faint blue hue, runes etched along the pauldrons, and her cloak ripples with an enchantment that never touches the wind. In her hand, a spear of pure liquid crystal reforms with each droplet that falls from its length. The defenders roar in recognition. The clan leader, someone shouts, relief cutting through the fear. My clan, she says, will not surrender to monsters. The water around her churns in response to her words, forming a storm that coils and twists like living serpents. We are Watervale. Our walls are rivers, our hearts the sea. You may break against us, but you will never claim us. Her declaration slams into the defenders like a war drum. Chapter 265-267. New Siege Weapon. Her declaration slams into the defenders like a war drum. Archers lift their bows again. Mages press their hands to the runes along the battlements, feeding mana into the city's wards. Even the uncertain among them straighten, their fear tempered into resolve. Mazel only watches her for a moment, expression unreadable. Then, a faint, amused breath escapes him. So be it, he says. His gauntlet hand rises slowly. The choice was given. Now I will take the city. His hand falls. The drums of the monster army thunder louder, and the ground begins to shake. The enemy lines part. From between the formations, the siege weapons roll forward, massive constructs of blackened steel and rune-carved timber, each mounted on colossal wheels wrapped in scaled monster hide. Even the veterans on the wall mutter curses under their breath. But these aren't the usual boulder throwers or crude rams. Each towering frame carries a crystal sphere the size of a cart, cradled in an intricate cradle of glowing sigils. Elemental runes shimmer across the surface, shifting in color. Red for fire, brown for earth, pale blue for wind, and deep azure for water. Cycling faster as mana floods into them. They're feeding them mana stones. The mage captain mutters, eyes narrowing. High-grade ones. The output gods above, that's not siege firepower, that's destruction made manifest. On Mazel's order, the first weapon tilts its cradle upward. A surge of light pulses, followed by the deep hum of runes coming alive. Then, with a thunderous crack, the first elemental shot tears through the sky. A roaring sphere of flame wrapped in spiraling winds. The moment it slams into the shimmering dome of Watervale's shield, the barrier quivers like a struck drum. The heat ripples across the sky, scattering droplets from the water storm coiled around the clan leader. Brace! The mage on the wall shouts, his voice straining. They're testing for weaknesses. Another boom. This time a sphere of compressed earth strikes the shield, sending tremors through the ward pylons buried deep in the walls. A younger soldier grips his spear tight. The shield will hold, right? It will, the older sergeant says, though his eyes don't leave the siege weapons. If it doesn't, he doesn't finish. The third shot comes, pure water mana condensed into a crushing torrent, detonating on impact with enough force to make the barrier shimmer dangerously thin for a heartbeat. Clan leader Kore's voice cuts sharply across the battlements. Ready the retaliatory batteries. Load the heavy ballistae. Mages, channel for arc fire. Gears grind, winches creak, and the clan's siege platforms turn outward, aiming their iron-banded bolts toward the advancing enemy. Mana cannons hum faintly as crystals glow within their housings. But compared to the behemoth weapons of the monster army, Watervale's engines look almost fragile, fine tools of human craft, not the devastating war machines that roar before them. The first volley smashes against the shimmering barrier in front of the enemy lines. An oval of pale crimson light held aloft by a towering, horned figure. The shield-bearers doesn't even flinch. Fierce skill radiates like molten glass, absorbing every blow and bleeding the energy harmlessly into the ground. Tch. They're not even scratched, Corey mutters under her breath. Far beyond the lines, Mazel raises a single hand. Enough stalling. Break their shell. In the blink of an eye, four figures vanish from his side. The air ripples as they appear above the city's barrier. 4 Tier 6 commanders, each cloaked in killing intent thick enough to suffocate lesser men. Hit it hard. The first snarls, his blade a black arc as he strikes. Boom! The dome flares under the impact, runes screaming with strain. But the Watervale clan's own Tier SIXS are already moving. From the heart of the city, pillars of water erupt skyward, parting to reveal 4 figures, each radiating enough power to warp the very air around them. You dare! One of them bellows, a warhammer forming from solid ice in his grip. And then collision. The first exchange is blinding. Steel meets steel, magic meets magic, and the skies above the city detonate in sound and light. The shockwaves alone send clouds tearing apart and blast the rain into steam. One of Mazel's commanders, wreathed in black fire, drives a flaming fist into the barrier while fending off a spear thrust aimed for his throat. His opponent, Watervale's fastest Tier 6, moves like lightning, each strike sending ripples through the air. On the other side, a female commander cloaked in shadow draws a crescent of pure darkness, cleaving a water serpent in half. The serpent bursts into a storm of droplets that reform instantly into a coiling wave, slamming her back with crushing force. The battlefield above the city becomes an apocalypse. Blinding flashes, screaming winds, torrents of water turn to vapor by fire so hot it glows white. The air tastes of ozone and blood. Below, the siege weapons keep hammering the barrier in perfect rhythm with each clash in the sky, trying to force a breach. And somewhere in the center of it all, Mazel watches calmly, as though the end of the world is simply the beginning of his plan. From her vantage on the wall, Corey never lets her gaze drift far from him. Mazel stands there, still as a monolith in the storm, his hands folded behind his back, watching the battle above like a man surveying a chessboard. She knows if he moves, it won't be to test the defenses, it'll be to end them. Her grip tightens around her spear. Every instinct screams at her to retreat, to flee far from the suffocating aura that coils off him like smoke. Even from here, her skin prickles and her lungs feel heavy. That one, she murmurs under her breath, isn't a man I should be near. The old man beside her hears the tone but not the words. Lady Corey? Nothing, she says quickly, eyes still fixed on Mazel. Because the truth is, she's no fool. She's a high-level Tier 6, one of the strongest in Watervale, but against him, that strength would shatter in moments. Still, She isn't defenseless. Her mind flickers to the marks she carries, the bindings that hum faintly beneath her skin, invisible to the eye. A web of oaths and contracts carved into the very soul of her. A shiver runs down her spine as Mazel's head turns, just slightly. His gaze sweeping across the wall until it meets hers. For a heartbeat, the sounds of battle fade beneath the pounding of her pulse. His expression doesn't change, but there's something in his eyes, recognition, or perhaps interest. Lady Corey, the commander says urgently, another volley incoming. She forces herself to look away, raising her spear. Keep firing. Don't let the barrier have even a single crack. The fight has raged for an hour now. Every strike, every explosion, every clash of power has left the city's shield webbed with cracks that crawl like ice over glass. The barrier groans under the strain. Lines of pale light split across its surface, each one spreading faster than the last. Mages on the walls are drenched in sweat, their faces pale, hands trembling as they keep pouring mana into the runes. But they all know it. Once the shield breaks, the real carnage will begin. Corey's voice cuts through the chaos, clear and unyielding. Be ready, everyone. Defend this place with your life. Protect your families. Her declaration slams into the defenders like a war drum. Archers draw back their bows with renewed force. Pikemen plant their weapons against the stone, bracing themselves. Mages grit their teeth, their spells burning hotter. Even the greenest soldier on the wall swallows his fear and sets his jaw. A deep rumble shakes the air. Another volley. The first elemental sphere, fire entwined with wind, screams down and slams into the barrier. The sky turns white-hot, heat slamming into every face on the wall. Before the light fades, the second shot, a boulder of compressed earth, hits from another angle, the ground lurching under their feet. Hold! Hold! Captain roars. Above, the tiers excess are still locked in a storm of steel and magic. Blinding arcs of light, shockwaves that tear the clouds apart, torrents of water hissing into vapor against searing flame. Every clash sends spiderweb fractures racing across the barrier below them. One particularly brutal exchange, the two slamming their full power into each other, makes a section of the shield overhead shatter outward like brittle glass before the runes stitch it closed again. The sound of it, sharp and final, sends a shiver through every soldier's spine. The inevitable happens. With a sound like a mountain splitting in two, the barrier finally gives way, shards of pale light exploding outward before fading into the stormy air. For a heartbeat, the city stands frozen, the defenders staring in stunned silence at the gaping wound in their shield. Mazel's lips curl into a faint smile. Advance, he says, no louder than a calm breath, yet his voice cuts through the battlefield as if carried by the wind itself. The monsters move. From the breach, dozens of hulking humanoid figures surge forward, each at least twice the height of a man, their bodies armored in chitin and jagged bone. Eyes gleam in unnatural colors, crimson, gold, and sickly green, while weapons forged from the best blacksmith, Thier rune metal gleam under the rain. The front rank doesn't charge blindly. They move with chilling coordination, shield-bearing brutes forming a wall while lean, long-limbed killers slip between them, their claws clicking in anticipation. Behind them, casters with warped staves lift their weapons to the sky, their guttural chants twisting the air. Archers, Corey shouts, her voice sharp as steel. Cut them down before they hit the wall. The first volley arcs high, raining down on the advancing tide. Several monsters crumple, arrows buried deep in their skulls, but others raise shields of black stone or simply catch the shafts mid-flight and snap them like twigs. Then the real fight begins. Chapter 266-268. Mazel vs. Corey. The sky and the ground are filled. Above, Tier 5s clash like gods in the storm. Swords that split clouds, spells that boil the rain, shockwaves that flatten rooftops with every strike. Below, the field outside the walls churns with bodies, thousands of monsters pressing forward like an endless tide, their shrieks and war drums drowning the cries of men. The Watervale warriors on the wall stare wide-eyed, their faces pale under the firelight. By the gods! One whispers, his bow trembling in his grip. Another mutters hoarsely, how are we going to defend this? Shut your mouths. The captain snarls, shoving them back into line. You want to live? Then fight. The wall erupts in motion. Spells flare, lances of fire, bolts of lightning, spears of ice, raining into the first wave. Arrows darken the sky. Stones spell hurled from trebuchets smash into the monsters below, scattering blood and limbs. But the tide doesn't stop. A shield brute with a body like a fortress slams into the wall of pikes. Spears crunch uselessly against its armor, snapping like twigs. With one sweep of its massive club, it sends a dozen men flying, their screams cut short as they crash against the stones. Bring it down. Kore roars, vaulting from the parapet in a burst of blue light. She meets the brute mid-swing, her spear crackling with frost. With a twist, she drives the point under its arm, where the plates don't meet. Ice explodes outward, freezing its inside solid. The creature staggers, roaring, before Kore whirls and smashes the butt of her spear into its chest, shattering it into 100 frozen shards. The soldiers cheer, but it's cut short as 3 more brutes rush forward, their weapons raised. Overhead, 2 flying figures crash into the wall's edge. 1 human, 1 monster, both tier 5. They exchange blows at blinding speed, steel against claw, sparks spraying with every strike. The shock waves alone knock soldiers from the battlements like leaves in a gale. Stay back! The tier 5 human bellows, kicking his foe into the air and launching after him. The 2 vanish upward in a blur, their fight continuing among the storm clouds. But more follow. A pack of lean, 4-armed killers scrambles up the ladders, moving like spiders. Their claws tear through shields, helmets, and flesh alike. A young warrior barely has time to scream before one rips him apart. Hold the wall! A veteran shouts, driving his blade through one's neck, only for another to leap on him and tear his throat out in the same breath. The wall runs red. The wall is chaos. Blood sprays, screams echo. The crash of spells and steel never stops. Yet Kore's eyes keep flicking back. Past the carnage, past the press of monsters. To him, Mazel. He hasn't lifted a hand. Not once. He only watches, the stormlight painting his pale features in silver. Even standing still, his presence presses on the battlefield like a mountain. Soldiers don't even realize they keep glancing at him, shivering as though winter crawled down their spines. Kore knows it. Every instinct tells her that the battle raging now, the walls painted in fire and blood, the clash of tier 5s above, is nothing more than spectacle to him. Prologue. Her knuckles whiten on her spear. If she hesitates, if she waits until he chooses to act, there will be no city left to defend. So she makes the choice. With a burst of mana, she propels herself skyward, blue light trailing her form like a comet. The storm wind tears at her cloak as she rises, higher and higher until she hovers at his height. Mazel's head turns toward her, calm as a man turning to greet a guest. He tilts his chin slightly, eyes narrowing just the faintest fraction. You're the leader of this clan? His voice rolls low and steady, yet it reverberates like a bell across the battlefield. Kore steadies herself against the weight of it. Her voice comes sharp and clear. Yes, I'm Kore of Watervale. For a moment, silence stretches. Rain patters against the invisible barrier of his aura before sliding off in rivulets. Unable to touch him, Mazel studies her. Then the faintest smile curves his lips. You do know, he says softly. With your level, you won't even scratch me. Kore's chest tightens, but she doesn't flinch. I know. She shifts her spear, the tip catching the stormlight like a shard of ice. But don't underestimate the Watervale clan. Her voice hardens, slicing through the air. Use it now. The words echo like thunder across the city. In an instant, the 3 mage towers flare to life. Their runes blaze, casting the skyline in blinding gold. Symbols, vast, intricate, spiral into being above each tower, humming with power. The towers pulse once, then streams of light lance upward, converging toward Kore in a lattice of radiance. Threads of pure magic weave around her, wrapping her in a cloak of power not her own. The sky itself trembles. Mazel's eyes narrow, though the faint smile never leaves his face. Borrowed power, he says, his voice dropping colder, heavier. He doesn't move, yet the air thickens. Good. Now it doesn't feel like I'm bullying you. Kore lifts her spear, now blazing with the power of 3 towers channeled through her bindings. Her hair whips wildly in the storm, her aura swelling until even the soldiers below turn to look up in awe. She meets his gaze, steady and unyielding. Then watch closely. Let me show you what I can do with this borrowed power. The storm splits open with the clash of 2 titans. Mazel exhales slowly, the chains on his twin war axes rattling like serpents hungry for blood. His chest swells, and then, Tier 6, Battle Fury. The roar isn't just sound. It's a tidal wave of mana, a war cry. The very sky shudders. Crimson fire explodes from his body, a dome of fury expanding outward. Every monster on the field convulses, then howls as strength floods into them. Their claws sharpen, their eyes blaze red, their muscles bulge with unnatural vigor. Even the weakest gnarl at the walls like beasts unchained, while the brutes slam their weapons harder, shaking the fortifications to the core. Kore staggers under the weight of it, her spear trembling in her hands. He's buffing all of them, every single one. Without warning, he moves. One instant he is still, the next, his war axes blur through the storm, chains snapping taut as he swings. Tier 5. Ashen sundering. Flames surge along the twin blades as he brings them crashing down. The air itself splits, a fissure of molten fire tearing toward Kore. Kore thrusts her spear forward. Tier 5. Glacial bastion. A wall of crystalline ice erupts before her, glowing with the power of the towers. Fire meets frost in a blinding detonation. Steam exploding outward, washing the sky white. Through the haze, mazzle barrels in, chain axes whirling. One hook of burning steel slams against her spear, the other comes for her side. Kore twists, kicking off a platform of conjured ice. The blow grazes her, tearing through her shoulder guard, molten sparks hissing against her skin. Kore's eyes flash. Tier 5. Frozen step. She vanishes into a burst of frost, reappearing an instant later above him, spear raised. The towers surge, funneling torrents of power into her weapon until it glows with blinding blue. Tier 6. Skyfrost impale. She dives, driving her spear downward with the weight of the storm itself. Mazzle raises both axes, chains tightening around his arms. His aura flares, fire and wrath merging into a single storm. Tier 6. Infernal breaker. The clash is apocalyptic. Spear meets axe in a shockwave that splits clouds for miles. Fire and frost explode outward, raining shards of ice and embers over the battlefield. Soldiers below are thrown from their feet, monsters crushed by falling debris, towers shaking under the force. For a heartbeat, they lock there, Kore pressing down with borrowed might, Mazzle holding with brute strength and fury. The air between them screams, fracturing from the strain. Kore grits her teeth, sweat freezing on her brow. "I'll show you. That water-veil doesn't bow," she growls. Mazzle laughs, a booming, terrible sound. "Good. Show me your defiance, so I can burn it to ash." On the northern wall, another duel has already pushed past the limits of human endurance. A Tier 6 of Waterveil, called Renler, strikes again and again at the commander of Mazzle's unit, a monster of jagged stone and sinew whose 4 burning eyes never blink. Renler's halberd crackles with layered runes, his every swing carving furrows of power into the ground. "Fall, damn you!" Renler bellows, driving his weapon down. The commander blocks with one plated arm, the impact splitting the earth like an earthquake. Dust and sparks explode outward. "You struggle." The monster's voice rumbles, deep as a cave. But struggle only feeds the grave. Renler spits blood, his teeth bared. "Graves are for monsters like you." He kicks forward, halberd whirling in a storm of arcs, cutting, thrusting, slamming with brutal precision. Each strike leaves glowing scars across the commander's body. Soldiers nearby cheer, hope flickering in their eyes. Then hope dies. The commander plants both hands into the earth. Tier 6. Abyssal Maw. The ground beneath Renler heaves, then opens. A jagged chasm splits the battlefield, lined with snapping jaws of molten stone. Heat sears the air. Renler leaps, halberd spinning. Tier 6. Waterbreaker Cleave. He drops like a waterfall, smashing straight into the commander's chest. The monster stumbles, cracks shatter its plated hide. For a heartbeat, it looks as if victory is within reach. But the commander does not fall. His 4 eyes blaze with hellfire. Not enough. Its clawed hand shoots forward, piercing straight through Renler's chest. The halberd slips from numb fingers. "Sir Renler!" A soldier screams, voice full of desperate hope. Renler gasps, blood spilling from his lips. His eyes dart to the walls, to his men, to the city he swore to protect. His voice is weak, but carries. "Don't falter." Waterveil stands. Chapter 267. A God? Part 1. Chapter 267. Chapter 267. A God? Part 1. The claws twist. His body convulses, then goes limp. "Marshal!" Voices scream from the wall. A dozen soldiers break formation, rushing forward, only to be torn down as the commander wrenches Renler's corpse free and hurls it into the mud. The body hits the ground with a hollow thud. His halberd lands beside him, its runes guttering out like dying stars. Silence follows for a heartbeat. Then despair ripples through the defenders like poison. The commander lifts its head to the storming sky and roars, a sound that drowns even the thunder. "One of your pillars has fallen." Humans crumbles. Soldiers flinch, their grips faltering, their formation wavering. On the wall, a captain grips his blade until his knuckles turn white. His voice cracks as he shouts above the panic. "Hold the line. Don't let his death be in vain. Fight. Damn you, fight." The cries of the captain cut through the chaos, but no matter what he shouts, the hearts of Waterveil's warriors are already breaking. Men glance toward Renler's fallen form and feel their courage bleed away. Shields lower, spears tremble, formations crack. The monsters sense it, hunger igniting in their burning eyes. And then, as if on cue, the commander who felled Renler throws back its head and bellows. A guttural roar that shakes the walls. Other monster commanders answer in unison, their cries stitching together into one dreadful chorus. The effect is immediate. Monsters surge like a black tide. 2 Tier 5 commanders break off, their immense frames barreling across the battlefield to reinforce their kin. Where once the clash was balanced, desperate, but even now the weight tilts. The monsters strike harder, faster, tearing into wavering lines. Human screams rise in place of war cries. The walls of Watervale, so long unbroken, shudder beneath the pounding assault. Above, Kore staggers back, her cloak of borrowed light fraying under the relentless storm of Mazel's fury. Cuts mar her arms, blood streaks down her cheek, her breathing ragged. Her spear hand shakes as she steadies herself on a half-shattered platform of ice. Mazel doesn't press. He watches her with a predator's patience, flames wreathing his massive frame. His voice rolls out heavy as thunder, cruelly calm. It looks like this is the end. Kore forces herself upright, planting her spear to keep from falling. Her hair clings to her face, soaked with sweat and rain. Her chest heaves, but her eyes, though dimmed, do not yield. She spits blood into the storm, then meets his gaze. Not while I still stand. Mazel's smile spreads, slow and merciless. Stand then. Break every bone if you must. Struggle until your breath fails. He hefts his twin axes, the chains rattling like funeral bells. It changes nothing. Watervale falls today. Kore steadies herself, the weight of his words pressing against her ribs like chains. Her body is trembling, but not from fear, her resolve holds. She tightens her grip on her spear, then suddenly asks, her voice raw but clear through the storm. What's your name? Mazel tilts his head, faintly amused. Mazel, general of the Erevaris kingdom. Her lips curve in a tired, blood-stained smile. Do you believe in gods, Mazel? For the first time he falters. His brow furrows, though his stance never loosens. No. If my king becomes a god, then I will believe in him. Nothing else. He narrows his eyes. Are you done with these questions? You did well with just a borrowed power, but this is where it ends. Kore breathes heavily, her fingers slipping on her blood-slick spear shaft. I did well? No. She shakes her head, forcing her gaze to bore into his. You held back. The whole fight. You never once used your full strength. Mazel does not deny it. His silence is heavier than admission. Kore exhales shakily. Then, closing her eyes, she kneels on the drifting shard of ice. Her voice softens into a murmur, words rolling like ripples over water. O great Lycerus, eternal tide, keeper of the deep, I have walked your banks and called your name. I have fought with strength not my own, but let me now fight with all of me. Take my breath, my blood, my body. Let the rivers of my life spill into your sea. In return, lend me your tide, so that Watervale may not drown this day. The mark etched along her collarbone flares to life, spreading like glowing veins across her body. Azure light seeps from her skin, weaving into streams that circle her form. The air grows heavy with the scent of rain and salt. Her aura surges, climbing, straining, then breaking past its borrowed shell. Her hair rises. Drenched in pale light, her spear becomes a shard of ocean itself, dripping with currents that hiss and twist in the storm. Kore suddenly screams, a sound so raw it pierces through the storm and battlefield alike. Her body convulses violently as if it's tearing itself apart. Blue veins of light crawl across her skin, bursting from her collarbone mark. Blood streams from her mouth, nose, and ears, yet the glow only grows brighter. Her eyes roll back, then turn completely white. The air around her warps, trembling under the weight of her power. Her aura surges upward, growing wilder, heavier, almost touching the threshold of a quasi-Tier 7. The atmosphere bends with it, waves of mana crash outward like tidal surges, shaking the heavens themselves. The soldiers on the wall stagger, some collapsing to their knees under the crushing weight. Even the monsters below pause mid-swing, their snarls turning uneasy. And Mazel? He smiles. His crimson eyes burn hotter, and his chains rattle as his chest heaves with exhilaration. He doesn't retreat, doesn't flinch. His blood is boiling, every fiber of him screaming for battle. This is it, he growls, his grin splitting wider. Since the day this invasion began, I haven't had a single fight worth remembering. But you, you make my blood sing. Kore's body jerks, no longer moving with will but with instinct alone. She lunges. Her spear whistles through the storm, A tidal wave condensed into a single strike. Mazel brings his twin axes up, chains coiling as he crosses them to block. The clash is apocalyptic. A deafening boom shatters the air. The impact throws Mazel like a meteor across the battlefield. He crashes through the mountainside in the distance, the stone exploding apart in a thunderous landslide. For a moment, silence. Then from the cloud of dust and falling rock, laughter. Ha 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 ha. Mazel's roar of joy echoes like a war drum, shaking both heaven and earth. He steps from the ruin, battered but unbroken, fire blazing from his form. This is it. This is what I've been waiting for. He spreads his arms wide, and the ground cracks beneath him. His aura flares outward, no longer restrained. 6 tier 6 buffs ignite across his body in a blinding blaze. Chains blaze with infernal heat. His axes glow like molten suns, and the very sky darkens under the pressure. His killing intent surges, drowning the battlefield like an ocean of flame and steel. The weight of his aura slams down over everything. On the walls, soldiers collapse to the ground, clutching their chests, their lungs crushed by the sheer force. Monsters and humans alike freeze mid-motion, their bodies trembling against the suffocating oppression. Even the commanders among the enemy horde snarl and falter, their bloodlust swallowed by the sheer dominance of Mazel's presence. He looks across the distance at Kore, his grin sharp and feral. Come then, human. Whatever you've become, show me. Kore does not answer with words. Her head tilts back and she lets out a sound no longer human. A primal scream, like a beast tearing its throat apart. Her spear shudders in her hands as if alive, the ocean itself roaring through the weapon. She launches forward. The storm splits in her wake, clouds shearing apart as though the sky itself is being stabbed. Her spear thrusts, glowing with tidal light, the pressure of the strike enough to tear the air into ribbons. Mazel meets her charge, his grin savage. His twin axes blaze like suns, their chains coiling around his arms like serpents. He swings. The collision is cataclysm. The moment their weapons meet, the air detonates. Shockwaves rip across the battlefield, tearing trees from the earth, flattening fortifications, and splitting the land into jagged ravines. The walls of Watervale groan under the pressure, whole sections of stone cracking and collapsing as the sheer force ripples outward. Soldiers are thrown like leaves in a hurricane, monsters are shredded where they stand, their bodies bursting apart from the backlash. And still, neither Kore nor Mazel yield. Mazel bellows, his crimson aura igniting into flame. Tier 6, Infernal Cataclysm. His axes blaze, vomiting waves of molten fire that spiral outward. The ground liquefies into rivers of lava as his skill manifests, the battlefield itself burning into a volcanic wasteland. Kore roars back, thrusting her spear into the heart of the inferno. Tier 6, Ocean's Judgment. Her weapon explodes with a torrent of endless water, an entire sea crashing down in a single breath. Walls of tide and storm burst forth, swallowing flame, tearing apart earth and sky alike. Fire and water collide. The two forces consume each other in a storm of chaos, steam screaming skyward as molten rivers meet unending tide. The heavens roar, the earth quakes, and Watervale itself trembles as if the world cannot contain their fury. Through the boiling mist, their silhouettes clash again. Kore thrusts, her body jerking with unnatural force, her spear carving whirlpools into the air. Mazel's chains snap forward, axes spinning like meteors, cutting through ocean and storm alike. Each strike bends the battlefield closer to annihilation. Chapter 268-268. A God? Part 2. The clash escalates beyond reason. Kore's spear thrusts again and again, faster than the eye can follow. Her body a puppet of divine instinct, moving with no hesitation, no thought, only the command to destroy. Each blow carves rifts in the air, her strikes ripping open seams of pure mana. Her cracked flesh glows faintly, the white light bleeding from inside her like a star burning through paper. Mazel meets her with savage joy, every swing of his axes fueled by his monstrous vitality. Sparks and molten shards spray as his weapons grind against her spear, their collision birthing endless shockwaves. His laughter echoes over the battlefield even as blood runs down his arms, even as bone shows through torn flesh. Ha ha ha, this is it. Break yourself on me. Kore doesn't respond. Her jaw is slack, her breathing ragged, eyes glowing void white. Her voice is gone, only the storm inside her speaks. Her next strike pierces through his guard. The spear tip carves across his chest, splitting through steel-hard flesh and sending a spray of blood into the rain. Mazel staggers back a step, then throws his head back and roars with exhilaration. His wound steams, flesh knitting around it almost instantly. Good. Again. Again. But her body can't take it. With every movement, Kore's skin splits wider, fractures racing across her arms and shoulders like shattered porcelain. Blood gushes, sizzling into steam against her burning aura. Her ribs strain, cracking under the unnatural surge of borrowed divinity. A soldier on the wall cries out in horror, voice shaking. Her body, she's tearing herself apart. Still, she pushes forward. Her spear surges, a tidal wave condensed into a blade of light. The strike lands, a decisive blow that hammers into Mazel's side, sending him crashing to one knee, the stone beneath him fracturing under the force. For a heartbeat, silence. Then he laughs. The wound is deep, bone deep, but his chains coil and his axes blaze, his aura swelling like a furnace that refuses to die. His smile is manic, eyes burning brighter than ever. Corey's body shudders violently. Her skin fissures, light spilling from the cracks, her blood no longer red but glowing azure. She stumbles, barely catching herself with her spear. Her breath rattles, her chest rising and falling as if she is drowning in her own power. Her last fragments of humanity flicker, then fade. Her body moves again, spear rising for another strike, the afterimage of a warrior who has already passed. The dead fighting the living. Her body is moments from collapse, yet that unknown instinct surging through her refuses to yield. It senses the end, senses the vessel crumbling, and in that fleeting moment decides, if death is inevitable, then let it be with everything. Her spear trembles, glowing violently. The waters gathering around her no longer flow like rivers. They rise like an entire ocean, pressing down from above, swallowing the sky itself. The clouds blacken, thunder cracks, and the heavens bow under the weight of a storm no mortal body should wield. Mazel's grin falters for the first time, crimson eyes widening. Not with fear, but with savage delight. Oh, a final struggle? The chains coiled around his body ignite, blazing red as molten light courses through them, as though they drink straight from his veins. He slams both axes together, the sound like thunder cracking the sky, and his roar ripples across the battlefield. Good. Then I'll answer with mine. My strongest. Corey's spear fractures in her hands, not from weakness, but from transformation. The weapon sings, reshaping as torrents of water spiral around it, forming a colossal lance made of pure oceanic force. Her body cracks further, glowing fissures racing across her flesh. She has seconds, perhaps less, before her vessel gives out. And in those seconds, that unknown instinct commands her to release it all. Her voice tears from her throat, broken yet divine. Tier 6 skill, abyssal deluge. The sky collapses. A hole opens above the battlefield. A vast churning vortex of water and storm. It isn't rain. It's an ocean, inverted and crashing downward. An abyss descending from the heavens. The spear in her hand swells into a tidal spear, every thrust dragging the entire sea with it, as if the world itself is drowning. The walls of Watervale quake as the incoming tide eclipses sight itself, a wall of crushing weight blotting out moon and stars. Soldiers can only stare, mouths open in awe and terror. And Mazel? His chains rattle wildly, his body shaking not from fear, but from ecstasy. He slams his axes into the ground, lava surging outward, veins of molten light spiderwebbing across the battlefield. He lifts his weapons, both now burning like twin suns. His voice booms, a proclamation of ruin. Tier 6 skill, Hell-Forged Annihilation. The ground ruptures. Columns of fire burst upward. Thousands of flaming spires lancing skyward like the world's bones tearing free. His axes, cloaked in molten flame and infernal steel, carve arcs that drag whole continents of fire with them. Chains blaze like serpents of molten iron, lashing through the sky, binding it in a cage of fire. Then ocean and inferno meet. The abyssal deluge crashes downward, an endless tide of crushing water, while hell-forged annihilation surges upward, an inferno bent on consuming heaven itself. The collision is beyond sound. The world seems to end in silence before erupting in a deafening roar that tears eardrums. Steam, flame, and water engulf everything. The battlefield shakes as if the land itself is screaming, mountains in the distance fracturing, rivers reversing their flow. The sky tears open, black clouds shredded apart, exposing the raw void beyond. Soldiers are hurled from the walls, monsters incinerated or drowned in the backlash. Stone fortifications vanish as though they were sand. The sea and the fire do not simply cancel. They devour, clash, consume, and explode endlessly. The sky clears slowly. The black clouds torn apart by clash of sea and fire drift away, revealing faint light above. Smoke and steam roll over the battlefield, carrying the acrid scent of charred stone and scorched water. When the haze thins, two figures remain, floating in the broken air. Mazel hangs upright, his axes still in his hands, but his body is battered beyond recognition. His chest is carved open in deep wounds, blood dripping freely down his torso, his armor in tatters. Even so, his aura still burns. Unbroken, defiant. Kore stands opposite him. Or what's left of her. Her body is breaking apart piece by piece, glowing fragments flaking into the wind. Her legs are already gone below the knees, dissolving into streams of azure light. Her face is calm, but empty, like a statue crumbling in silence. Hush falls over Watervale. Soldiers on the walls and in the streets stare upward, their breaths caught in their throats. Lady Kore, someone whispers, voice trembling. The disintegration quickens. Her spear fades first, the oceanic lance unraveling into spray. Her arms follow, cracks racing through them until they collapse into dust. She doesn't cry out, doesn't resist. It's as if she accepts it. And then, in the final flicker of her light, she is gone. Nothing remains. No body, no weapon. Only motes of shimmering water drifting on the air, before the wind scatters them across the ruined city. A wave of despair crushes the Watervale warriors. Some fall to their knees, others grip their weapons with shaking hands. Their leader, the pillar they fought beside, has vanished before their eyes. No! A veteran mutters, tears streaking through soot on his face. Not Lady Kore. Not like this. Clan leader. Another voice cries, breaking into sobs. Even the proudest warriors cannot hold back their grief. For a moment, it seems the spirit of Watervale dies with her. Then Mazel descends. Slow, deliberate, his massive frame bleeding yet unbowed. His boots strike the cracked stone with weight enough to silence the cries. His axes drag beside him, leaving scorched lines as he plants himself before the broken gates of the city. His voice, rough yet steady, rolls over them like thunder. As a respect for your clan leader, he says, each word heavy, I will give you a second chance to surrender. The soldiers stiffen. None dare speak. Surrendering, he continues, raising his head to meet their gazes, does not mean slavery. You will live. You will keep your homes. But you will kneel as subjects under my king. Murmurs ripple through the ranks. Hope and shame battle in their voices. Some glare at him with hatred. Others stare at the ground, trembling with fear. Time stretches, the silence unbearable. Finally, one man steps forward. A weathered Tier 5 warrior, his armor dented and soaked in blood. His sword arm hangs limp, but his eyes are steady. He bows his head, voice cracking. I surrender. My family still needs me. The words shatter the silence like a stone through glass. At first, only silence answers him. Dozens of eyes turn toward him. Some filled with contempt, others with envy, others with weary understanding. He kneels, his blade clattering to the broken stones, and presses his forehead to the ground. Then another follows. A young soldier, barely more than a boy, grips his spear with shaking hands. His lips tremble, but his voice comes out clear enough to reach the walls. I surrender too. My mother. She's waiting for me at home. One by one, voices rise. I can't throw my life away, not after everything she sacrificed to raise me. And my children. They won't grow up without a father. Besides, I'm certain Lady Kore would want us to keep living. Who are we to waste the life she fought for? The words spread like sparks on dry tinder. In moments, dozens throw down their weapons. Then hundreds. The sound of steel hitting stone fills the air. A chorus of surrender that rolls across the ruined city. If you want access to fast updates or the full novel in high-quality audio, contact me now and buy. I offer over 300 complete audiobooks from Pocket FM, Webnovel, Audible, and more. No locked episodes, no subscriptions. Just one-time payment via PayPal or Ko-fi. Message me directly on Telegram or WhatsApp, or check out the full list of available novels on Discord. Start listening to your next favorite audiobook today.